Good morning. My name is Mark Ludwig. I'm the CEO of Joerns Recover Care, and I wanted to spend some time today taking you through Inside the Purple Shirt, really our program at Joerns to talk about culture, talk about who we are, what we do. When I sit down and talk with you guys about Inside the Purple Shirt and why it matters and why we developed it, it's important that we kind of step back and look a little bit at our history and our experience as a company. We're over a 125-year-old company today. When we sat down 10 years ago and developed this program, we were a company that was just coming and separating from a much larger corporation, Sunrise Medical. And we established Joerns as a new and independent company, and at the same time made a number of acquisitions. And we knew through the chaos of becoming a new company with no infrastructure, acquiring a number of companies at the same time, that we needed to communicate to all of our associates. And today we have over 1,300 people around the world, but we needed to be able to communicate to all of our associates who we are and what we're trying to do, and hopefully get everybody running in the same direction. And that's what Inside the Purple Shirt hopefully does. It's really stood the test of time. We developed this 10 years ago. 5 years ago, after going through a lot of chaos and a lot of change, we felt that, man, we've learned an awful lot. Let's sit down and kind of redefine this program, take all of the learning. And ultimately what we learned is, when we went through it again, word for word, that we need to get back to the basics. We really need to get back to the principles that we defined. I think when we were struggling or had challenges, it was predominantly because we kind of lost our way relative to what was in our Inside the Purple Shirt program. So let me kind of just jump in and talk a little bit about who we are. As you can see, our vision is to redefine the patient care experience across the continuum of care. Much of our core focus early on was in skilled nursing. If you go back and look at the heritage of the company, we actually started as a fine furnishings company, but through World War I, the Great Depression, World War II, right, all of those things change who you are and maybe how you identify yourself as a company. But certainly during the Great Depression, fine furnishings weren't top of mind in Manhattan, and that's a big part of where the Joerns name came from. A top-of-the-line brand in New York selling fine furnishings from trees grown in Wisconsin and shipped all over the world. But by the 50s, we became a healthcare company. And our core focus since then really has been providing solutions and products in that skilled nursing, that post-acute space. A lot of times helping families and helping the elderly across our population. And so today, as we've evolved, we've become a company really focused now on the continuum of care, right? The reality is that the way care is provided today has changed a lot. It used to be you'd go to a hospital, you'd spend 10, 14, 15 days there. The length of stay in a hospital today is around 6 or 7 days. And so the key is to try and get people out of a hospital as fast as you can. And if you spend time in a hospital, you realize that it's about 60 degrees in there and cold. I mean, it seems like there's all kinds of things that provide incentive to get out as fast as possible. And obviously the reason for that is because they're trying to control infection and doing a lot of things. So it's really not a place that you want to be. And what we talk about today is this idea of aging in place. I mean, what we want to do is provide family solutions so that you can care for a loved one where they want to be cared for. But sometimes you can't care for a loved one in that ideal home environment, and you have to find some alternative care facility, some alternative care method. And that's what we focus on, that entire continuum. We as a company right now have partnerships in acute, so that's part of our continuum, but we threw it through key partnerships with companies like Stryker and companies like UHS, who invest all of their time in acute. We focus on that continuum, and whether it's providing the leading solutions for long-term acute care hospitals, and we're the leader in that space in providing our types of products and services, whether it's skilled nursing facilities where we own a pretty dominant share of those top 20 providers of care. The real thought leaders in the space partner with us for their capital equipment needs as well as their service needs. Or whether it's hospice. We expect to evolve into becoming the leading national hospice provider in the country. We serve about 5,000 hospice patients today, and we think we can grow that substantially in the years ahead. So we're a continuum of care company. We're in long-term acute care hospitals with an average length of stay of 25 to 30 days. We're a leader in the skilled nursing space with a dominant share where the average length of stay can be 55 to 65 days. We support companies like Kaiser that provide solutions to patients in hospitals in skilled environments, in the home. We're in patients' home every single day today. We serve about 35,000, almost 40,000 patients right now, and that's across the hospice space, people's homes, veterans' homes. We're in veterans' homes across the country. So that's the continuum of care. And again, we talk about redefining the patient care experience across that continuum. That's our vision. Our mission really is to fundamentally change and provide a tradition of caring. What we focus on in our mission is really the families, right? The patients, but really their families and the caregivers. It's all about that care experience. And our mission is to improve that experience. There's nothing worse than when someone is sick and children are involved and families are involved and you have a bad experience. There's really nothing worse than having a bad experience when you're already challenged as a family. And our goal through our products and services and solutions is to make sure that we have a positive impact on that dynamic. We focus on doing that every single day. And inside the purple shirt, the people that we bring into the environment to help ensure that things go smoothly, that things go well and that our products work well are all part of ensuring that we achieve our vision and ultimately impact families and lives in a very positive way. Inside our company, we spend a lot of time talking about people, passion, and performance. What we value, what we perceive to be who we are, I think is really critical. And when we talk about things like character and people first and profitability and total quality, those goals and those ambitions aren't things that we're perfect at every single day. The reason we define these things, in fact, our vision, our mission, and our values, is because sometimes during the chaos of the day-to-day, we lose sight of these things. I lose sight of them. I expect everybody probably on the team at some point loses sight of those things. But what's important, and we'll talk about this egalitarian model, we'll talk about really accountability, we talk about equal participation. Really the role of all of us is to hold me. It's my responsibility to hold you. It's really to hold everybody accountable to the things that we value. But if I say that people first is important, and if I say that people are important, but every decision I make is driven by profitability, somebody's got to hold me to task. Somebody has to hold me accountable. And that isn't somebody else. In this company, everybody has to raise their hand. Everybody has to feel like that's my responsibility. And over the years, it's been kind of fun and interesting as we've had people really take that seriously. We talked about, even with the custodial staff, because one of the areas in the business where you think of it's important to all of us is recycling. And so you kind of say, well, hey, is it my responsibility as a CEO to focus on recycling? We'll certainly have to support it. But who's really focused in that area? Who's thinking about that every minute? And it's the custodial staff. And if the CEO is not recycling, I can either have the custodial staff telling everybody in our factories, hey, the CEO doesn't recycle, or he can come to me and say, hey, Mark, you're not recycling. And so as I kept telling that story over time, I kept getting more recycling bins in my office, and I always joke around 7 o'clock at night when he'd come in saying, man, I really love that story because I'm going to hold you accountable on recycling. And it's just a perfect example of really what's expected from everybody. So it's important that we talk about people first. It's important that we talk about profitability. It's important that we talk about knowledge. I mean, if knowledge is important to you, if growing, if being challenged sometimes in a chaotic environment isn't something you want, this is not the right company for you. If you're not dedicated, if the Joerns Recovery Care name doesn't represent the best in class, the best brand, if that doesn't feel important to you, then it's probably not the right company. But what's also important for us to understand about our values is that they're all equally important. So we can't get caught up in the fact that no matter what, people are more important than the other 8. Just like we can't get caught up on the fact that profitability is more important than the other 8. And so it's my responsibility, it's the executive team's responsibility, it's really all of our responsibilities to ensure that we bring balance to all those things because we value all of them. And that takes us a little bit into our corporate identity. When we sat down 10 years ago and developed this and then refreshed it 5 years ago, we did it knowing that we were going to go through a lot of change. We did it knowing that we needed to support a lot of that change. And so one of the biggest things that we've now done is brought 2 companies together that were very, very good equally in their respective areas, Joerns and Recovery Care. And so we have a new identity today. And we need to embrace that new identity as two merged companies coming together to take the best of both and to somehow translate that, even through all the chaos of change and merging two companies, turn it into something better than we were as independent companies. You know, Joerns was predominantly a manufacturing company. We're the best in class at manufacturing products. Everybody respected the Joerns name. Everybody respects the UltraCare name. When people buy other products in the lifting and repositioning space, they call them a Hoyer. You know, Arjo is the leader in the lifting and repositioning space. And when they buy an Arjo product, they say, hey, you know, we got to buy a whole bunch of Hoyers. That's the power of Joerns, and a lot of times our collection of brands and our products and services. So when we put the companies together last year in 2014, it was important that we take the best of both companies. Joerns had a goal of being vertically integrated. We wanted to make the best products, but we wanted to be able to make them at the lowest possible cost because we wanted to be positioned to ensure that we could provide those products to everybody. And the only way to do that is to have a stratified product lineup that allows you to provide, you know, the least expensive product that's good quality, as well as the best product at a good value price. But we also knew, and as part of the spinoff, we contemplated becoming a service company that integrates the best services with the best products. And if you can bring that whole continuum of designing and manufacturing the best products, combining that with unparalleled service, providing the best service, then you're uniquely positioned to really add value. You've got a great value proposition. And so over the years, up until last year, Joerns was developing from a manufacturing company and service company, but about 75%, even when we grew service as much as we could, we were still 75% manufacturing and only 25% service. And we wanted that to be balanced. When we brought the two companies together, it really changed who we are, and it helped us, I think, highlight, accentuate the value proposition, because when we put the two companies together, we're now 50% capital sales, we're now 50% rental, and we talk with customers, we talk about what's right for them. You want to buy equipment? Do you want to rent equipment? Do you want to rent equipment for a while and then buy it? What makes sense to you? But ultimately what we support and what makes sense is ensuring that whatever products they use are consistent. As they're facing nursing shortages and nursing challenges, it's all about efficiency. And so what's critical about our value proposition, and nobody else offers this in the space, is that we can provide, especially with our 120-year experience and over the last 50 years, selling more product than anybody else. We've got a foundation of product that's understood in the marketplace by nurses. And now we're providing all the services around those products. And it just makes it easier for them to run their business, you know, in partnership with us than any other solution. So our corporate identity today is now representative of Joerns and Recovery Care really coming together to partner with customers, with providers of care, to ensure that they can operate their organizations as efficiently as possible. And so that's what this strategy is all about. What we talk about here, and we sat down years ago, the idea, kind of with an x-axis, y-axis view, was to say, if we can combine unparalleled service, truly be the best service provider, and we can contrast that with having the best products, product superiority, then obviously along that axis, if I continue to get better and better and better in redefining what is great service, and I continue to get better at defining what is product superiority. So if I think on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm a 9 or 10, but then I reset what's 10, and I stretch that further, that's what that idea of an X and Y axis means. And if I continue to do that, then obviously I'm in a position to provide the best solutions, the best outcomes to families, to care providers, right, to everybody who's dealing with this crisis of needing care. And so that's what our strategy is. You're becoming a true leader in product superiority with innovative solutions, total quality, and speed. And so that's what we focus on, and that's truly a differentiator. If we look in our space at the competitors, and that's why we own such a dominant share of the thought leaders that provide care, is because the people that we touch, the people that partner with us, really understand the power of this model. And like I said, the great news is nobody offers the same solution set, and nobody has nearly the scale that we now have as a combined company, Joerns Recovery Care. But I've talked about through all of this, spinning off from a larger corporation, at the same time acquiring a number of companies, and now ultimately kind of managing together this merger. We knew that all of that activity was going to challenge us as a business. And even now, almost a year into this merger, we're challenged, still working through successfully putting the companies together. And so the way you manage through that isn't hope. You don't just hope that you make it through. You hope that things will get better. You have to have an organizational model that hopefully drives success in a defined way. And so the organizational excellence model talks to how do we get things done. So it's one thing to have the vision and the mission, values, and all those kind of fundamentals. But it's another thing to begin turning those things into action. And that's what the operational excellence model does. It all starts with a foundation, and that foundation is rooted in innovative leadership. So I talked about a number of examples. And what we talk about in this company is that everybody has to be an innovative leader. That's why it's the foundation of this model. If you don't have ideas, if you think your ideas don't count so you don't express your ideas, if you don't think you get paid enough to express ideas, those are all things that represent not being an innovative leader. But if you say when your work is done, hey, how can I help? If you say, we've always done things this way, but I really think this is a better way to do it, and you take that personal risk sometimes to challenge the status quo, those are great examples. Being an equal participant, being a custodial staff and telling the CEO, hey, get your act together in recycling, instead of telling everybody in the factory, hey, the CEO doesn't recycle, which then hurts the company as opposed to helps the CEO, right? Those are characteristics of being an innovative leader. And again, if we want to be successful here, if you want to be successful here, think about, and we talk a lot in Inside the Purple Shirt about what is innovative leadership. Again, we don't expect everybody to be perfect, and there are days when I'm not the best leader, I'm not the most innovative, but then sometimes I just got to get back and say, how do I get back on track? And that's what this operational excellence model really, to me, helps us do. And on top of that is our commitment to shared corporate values. We've defined those values. We got to be committed to them. And so on top of innovative leadership, it's important that my view of people first is as important to the organization as everybody else's view of people first. Profitability is important. If people say, hey, we don't really care about profit. We're a private equity-backed company. Getting a return on our investment is important. Getting a return on investment is important to any company. We're a 125-year-old company. We didn't last 125 years by not focusing on profitability. And my job is not to worry about pressure of, focusing solely on people or focusing solely on any specific thing. My job is to make sure that 100 years from now, we're a better company then than we are right now. And so committing to those shared corporate values is really important. And if you put those two together, if you put those two layers together as your foundation, you're in pretty good shape as a company to begin, dealing with some of the pressures that come from people working together. I personally don't think, that God put us all together to work effectively together, right? It's not inherently easy to work with people. Insecurity, if you think of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we're not all wandering around here self-actualized, right? A lot of people are just trying to survive. People are just struggling at home trying to survive. People come to work trying to survive. People feel like somebody's undercutting them. These are all the things. These are all the dynamics that play out in people's heads, in people's minds. And so you put us all together to work. It can be a real challenge. So it's really important we're committed to those values and seek supporting each other through the work effort. And then on top of that, it's important that we're aligned strategically. When you think about alignment, we can have a strategy, but if my executive team, or really anybody on the team, says that, hey, I don't think that's the right way to do it, I'm going to do it my own way. Well, as those things happen, things begin to break down. In the successful companies, although you want people to have individual ideas, you don't want to have people focusing on doing things that are focused more on individual success as opposed to total team success. And so strategic alignment is critical. And that's another hard and fundamental thing, I think, to change. And a lot of the examples I've cited over the years in talking about our program and inside the purple shirt, a lot of times the best people, the smartest people, the biggest risk takers, they're the ones that go their own way, right? That's why they've been successful. They went their own way. Steve Jobs is highly successful. He went to university and dropped out. You kind of just went his own way. So they're isolated examples, but in most cases you win by building successful teams and being part of successful teams. I always think about people as they emigrated from Europe to this continent, and then people emigrated from the east to the west coast. Well, who are those people that decided to get in a wagon train and cross the mountains? And if you think of the personality type associated with those people, you know that they were the biggest risk takers. You know they're the most confident. You know that they always want to do things their own way, and they were always rewarded by doing things their own way. And so you want those people. But when you got to the mountains, everybody decided to take a different path, to split up the supplies, etc., to deal with all the issues associated with just navigating west and all the insecurity, security issues and all those kinds of things. You know it was the people that hung together that put sometimes their own personal views, their own personal confidence aside to work together that ultimately conquered and achieved the best results. So that foundation, being strategically aligned, believing in the same fundamental values and working hard to live them, and taking sometimes the risks of really being an innovative leader, that's the foundation of the operational excellence model. And that's a good start, right? If we can do those things, you got a good start. And then we get into, kind of the pillars that I think are also just important to kind of managing the day-to-day. Knowledge management. If we're not focusing on improving knowledge, if we're not focused on learning about other jobs, it's like, hey, I do this job, but I'd really like to learn your job too, because if I know your job better, I'm going to do my job probably better, right? That curiosity, that idea that I can add more value if I got more knowledge, getting your MBA, taking a class, having better skills on the tools we use like Microsoft or SAP, asking for more education, constantly driving for more knowledge is important. And obviously, people that are always a source of knowledge, right? You like to work with those people. They're a source of knowledge. They're always helpful. Every time I have a question, Joe or Jane is a source of knowledge. Just ask Jane. She knows everything. Well, how would she just know everything unless she was inquisitive and was always constantly trying to learn somebody else's job or move from job to job or went outside and got additional skills? So knowledge management, we talk a lot in the book about knowledge management and how you seek better ways to gain knowledge. And it's not about getting an MBA. It's not about getting your bachelor's degree. It's about being more productive in the environment that we're operating, regardless of what you're doing. And the way you get more productive is to learn more about your job by being inquisitive, learning more about your job by seeing your job from outside, from somebody else's perspective. So a lot to talk about in knowledge, but really fundamentally important to driving towards better unparalleled service, right, and more product superiority. And then resource management. One of the fundamental things you often see with people on resource management is it's like, hey, when I started, nobody told me even where the bathroom was. I didn't even, no one helped me get started. Well, did you have resources available to you? I mean, did somebody lock you down literally in your cube and just say you can't leave it and there's no bathrooms, we're not going to tell you where they are because we don't expect you ever to go? Right? That's not the way it works. But you can live in that world. There's a lot of people that do. It's like they didn't give me the tools I needed. I was unsuccessful because they didn't give me the tools I needed. I was unsuccessful because, there's a long list. And we've all been in that mode sometimes. Sometimes I've had pity parties for myself, and I said, well, the reason I didn't have success is because something I couldn't control. Resources are all about thinking about what are the resources available to me? Not the common ways of thinking about resources, but for us as a company, we can look either at myself or just us as a company. What resources do we have available? I can look at our balance sheet and say, well, I only have so much cash available to make an acquisition, so I can't make that acquisition. Even though we might fundamentally think that acquisition would be critically important to our long-term success, I'd say, you know what, I just don't have the resources to do it. And then 2 years go by, somebody else, one of my competitors acquired that company, and now they're off to the races, and I'm sitting in my company failing because I just made the decision I don't have access to those resources. then we lose out as a company. If I don't use our board of directors, David Chernow is on our board of directors. David Chernow is the CEO of Select, which is one of the largest specialty LTAC hospitals chains in the country. So am I using David Chernow to help us be successful? Am I using his ideas? Dale Thompson is retired CEO of Benedictine Health Systems. Benedictine is a Malcolm Baldrige Award winner and has a fundamental drive towards quality and success. I've sat, just with all the travel that I do, I sat on a plane once and was sitting next to an individual that does surveys across health facilities around the country. And so that's all this person did, was they measured results associated with all these surveys they did. And I said, yeah, that's interesting. I said, who are the best providers? I mean, with all the survey data, just who's the best? And the answer was Benedictine Health Systems is the best. I said, well, that's really interesting. Dale Thompson's a good friend. In fact, I think I had that conversation before he was on our board. But those are resources. So am I using Dale? Am I using the broader board? Am I presenting to them ideas and getting alignment with them so that they can bring things to us and I can leverage all of their contacts to get things done? So in my world, it's important that I look at who all my resources are, not limit myself to just me. And we all do it. I mean, even for me, a lot of times when things aren't going right, I want to do everything myself. Right? I begin to constrain my resources to just me. And when I do that, I put more pressure on me. And as I put more pressure on me, I think in the short term that I get better result. Because you know what? It's exactly the way I wanted it. Which doesn't necessarily mean it was good. I thought it was good because it's exactly what I wanted. But ultimately what I did is I short-circuited the system, and I ultimately didn't get others to grow, develop, either by learning more of what I'm looking for, that I hope is good, is fundamentally driving us towards becoming a better company. So anyway, resource management is critical. And when you're working through the day-to-day and getting tied into all of the issues that you face, sometimes at the end of the day, just step back. Think about whether or not you're taking advantage of full resources. You feel like, man, I don't feel good or I don't feel successful, I just don't have things that I need. Trust me, the best way to deal with that is to go talk to people about, hey, how did you get that done? Ultimately, find me. I travel an awful lot, but my door is always open. I'm real innovative. I'm real creative about how to get things done. I think there are a lot of people here that are like that. Find those people. But use resources. A lot of times there's resources available, in our communities, there's just resources available to us. And it's really people that you kind of see that take advantage of them the most, that you kind of say, man, how'd they get all that done? And it's because they take advantage of their resources. Change management. When you put two companies together that are very confident and focused on what they do and have been trained to feel great about what they do and why they're the best, it's really hard to put those two companies and say, oh, well, maybe that's not so good. We're going to do it this way. We're going to do it that way. We're always going to do things now the way Joerns did it. We're always going to do things the way Recover Care did it. When we go through this kind of change, having philosophy and policies in place to support change is critical. And ultimately, communication is one of the most important components of change. So when you read about change, and communication starts at the very beginning. Why would you change? If you want to get people to embrace change, you got to start with why are we doing it? We talk about why do we put these two companies together, bringing the scale together of the two companies to be perfectly balanced, to be completely agnostic about whether you want to buy capital or buy services, rent services from us. Those are all things that contribute to what we think is an industry-leading value proposition. That's why we did it. We didn't think everybody was going to love the idea of throwing the worlds upside down, and that's why we did it. But you got to communicate change, whether it's a small change that day or a big change like putting these two companies together. You got to communicate, why did we change? And if people have that understanding, even sometimes when you have to make a decision about a facility and closing a facility, if people understand why, it's just easier. It's easier to manage it. It's easier to process it as a person. And then as change is going on and the day-to-day is happening, are you getting updates on why the change happened and how the change is going and how it's going to affect me? One of the things that we did to help us with the idea of change is implement an engagement process, because we said we're going to go through all of this change. So how do people feel today, before the change? How do they feel? What are they insecure about? How do they feel about the idea of this integration, bringing the two companies together? How do they feel about the cultures of the two companies? How engaged are they in these companies? How do we feel? How does everybody feel? How's the integration going? How insecure are people about what all this means to them? And then almost more importantly, what are people saying? We got over 100 pages of data, line by line by line, with feedback from 1,300 people, with all different kinds of ideas. Am I and our management team involved in understanding all that data line by line? Are we categorizing it all to say how much of that is communication? How much of it is a lack of trust? How much of it is, related to a lot of things we talk about, here in Inside the Purple Shirt? And then 3 or 4 months later, we go through it again. Those are all things that help you manage and navigate change. And if you don't do those things, change is not going to go well. If you do those things, you're going to manage it better than most. But there's a fundamental way of thinking about change. That's why it's a pillar. Process management, same kind of thing. A lot of what I was talking about, even managing the idea of change, is it process-driven? A lot of the ideas that we have, even as we especially go through systems change and things, a lot of people say, well, that's just what we do that because it's the way we've always done it. Well, no, let's really kind of define what's the process. Is there a way to improve the process of getting from point A to point B? So we spent a lot of time talking about a process-oriented way of doing things. And then that also really leads to this idea of project management. How disciplined are we about taking on tasks? In the idea of service, if I win a large contract, and we win a lot of large contracts, or if I'm going after 5,000 hospice patients in a single bid, do I have a process to go after winning that business? Or do I let's just run after it? First man or woman wins. I mean, you don't win that way. And if you do, it's going to be really messy. Now, even if you do things right and you follow a lot of these things, just because of life, things are always under-resourced. Things are always going faster than perhaps they should go, etc. So things are always a little bit messy. But when I go after 5,000 hospice patients of growth, do I have a project approach? Do I have a project discipline, like a project management office, guiding how I go about it? Do I have a process that drives me into that project management structure? If I launch a new product, do I let every one of my product managers just kind of launch it their own way? Or do I ensure that my legal team, my engineering team, my manufacturing team, my compliance team, all those teams ensure that we're launching things the right way? And so do we have a project and a process to launch products? And if I rely on the individual success or focus and attention to detail of one product manager or all product managers, say, hey, we can get there faster if everyone just does their own thing. We're not going to get there faster. If my engineering organization doesn't have a PMO office, and I'm not ensuring that the marketing team, the marketing communications team, the sales team, because it's great, I can launch all kinds of products, but if the sales team isn't going to sell something or isn't invested in selling them, then I can launch products all day long and not go anywhere. So anyway, it's all those examples of why those pillars are so critical. And ultimately, what all of that foundation and what those pillars drive are this whole idea of performance excellence. In a lot of ways, for me, I think performance excellence isn't so much a specific thing, it's just better than what anybody else could do. I want to get there faster than anybody else could. If you look ultimately in how we've evolved over the last 125 years, over the last 10, over the last 2, and even over these last 6 or 9 months of putting these two companies together, I think we're doing things, when you step out of the chaos and look at it, we're doing things that nobody else could have done. And that's performance excellence in my mind. And if you focus on performance excellence, then ultimately you've got stakeholder value. When we don't talk about stockholder value, stakeholders are what's important to us. Stakeholders for us are everybody that we're involved with, right? I've got children. My children are relying on me to go to college. You know, there's a lot of people in the company that have children that you want to go to college, right? That all relates to my job and success that we have as a company. They're all stakeholders. You know, the communities that we all live in are stakeholders to our success. The caregivers that are struggling with their management, struggling with the ability to make investments so that they're, you know, not dealing with chronic back pain. You know, when they're dealing with, you know, having the right training, doing things the right way with the best products. You know, nurses are huge stakeholders for us. A spouse that can't care for their spouse any longer is a stakeholder. How do you feel about the process? And then patients. You know, what kind of care are you getting when you're in a care setting? Do you have positive, optimistic people going out of their way to provide the best care to make you feel good every minute you're there? Is that the environment that you're in? That's what we strive to do, is to create that environment. And for us, we've been lucky. And you'll see examples, and we try and publish a lot of the examples in this company because we change the lives of so many people. We invested in dolphin technology. You know, back to the example of resources. We didn't really have a lot of resources available to us. But 5 years ago, maybe 6 years ago, we invested in dolphin technology. You know, kind of a crazy entrepreneur in Florida had developed technology. Technology was developed so that we could transport dolphins, marine mammals that were millions of dollars, over, you know, $8 to $10 million were invested in dolphins, and then they were transported all over the world to help protect, you know, sea lanes and protect our military, you know, to find bombs and other kinds of things underwater. That's what they were trained to do. But in transport, as they're going to these hot spots in the world, they'd often die in transport. So in the 90s, millions of dollars were spent on developing technology that would allow for these mammals to be successfully transported. And that technology ultimately is what drives the fluid immersion simulation technology that we acquired back 5 or 6 years ago. And what have we done with it? We've changed lives. You know, the stakeholders, the people that are involved in us. A result, we had a veteran who's a quadriplegic. As a quadriplegic, he had traveled the world, involved in kind of the world, you know, world games associated with people with disabilities. He lives in a VA facility in the Midwest, and after doing, you know, all kinds of travel, all kinds of things over time, he'd break down in his wheelchair. Would develop stage 3, stage 4 ulcers. For you guys that don't know, Christopher Reeve, for example, died from a stage, you know, decubitus ulcer. A lot of times, if you're in a wheelchair and you break down and develop a wound of that nature, it'll take 6 months to heal. It's that impactful on your life. Well, anyway, in this case, Joe was told by his doctor, hey, you're done. You're done traveling. You're done living in a wheelchair at all. You're done doing anything other than staying in bed. And this guy, if you met him, one of the most vibrant people you'll meet, even as a quadriplegic, and all the challenges that provides to him. Well, if everything about you is getting out there, even with your circumstances, and that's taken away from you, obviously that's life-changing. That's I don't want to live. But we got Joe a dolphin cushion for his wheelchair after recovering on a dolphin mattress, and he is now traveling around the country at least. We met him in Vegas just a couple years ago months after he began working with our technology, and he's up now 12 to 14 hours a day in his wheelchair. I mean, I just look at that one example as, hey, that's all I need to do. Change that one person. We had a 15-year-old spina bifida patient, 15-year-old girl whose family had to continuously take her into the hospital for 1 month, 2 months of care because she was constantly developing stage 3 and stage 4 ulcers at home. So she'd go home. That would last a short period of time. She'd be back in the hospital for months dealing with the ulcers that were coming from her environment. She was on the most advanced technology. She was on air fluidized therapy technology. But the best technology for her was dolphin. And then what was best about it, because of the way it's designed, because of the way it works, it was technology that she could easily employ at home. Didn't cost $1,000 a month in electricity. Didn't weigh 3 tons. And allows her, I hope, and we continue to learn more, to have a very successful life at home with her family. And you can imagine, probably everybody in this room has experienced going to a hospital, but imagine taking your child to a hospital. Imagine having that person home. That's what we do. So that's what we focus on as stakeholders. What we do in this company is important. It's important that we generate profit. It's important we do all that because we're a business. But what we do and why we're important, as all of us, is because what we do is important to and will be to millions of people. I talk a lot about the fact that we serve 35,000 lives, but we serve hundreds of thousands of people affected by those people. We want to grow and serve 40,000 to 50,000 at the end of this year. We want to serve 100,000 people in the next 18 to 20 months. We want to be the national leader providing the best services to hospice. We want to continue to be the dominant player providing the best care in the long-term skilled environment. We want to be the best company to provide services to the long-term acute care hospitals. And just as importantly, as people age in place and people who are in those facilities receiving care go home, we want to be there to ensure that they're receiving the kind of care that keeps them there. That's the best cost place to be. That's the best place to be. And that's why what we do is so important and why our vision of providing really the best solutions across that continuum of care is important. So anyway, I welcome you to Joerns Recovery Care. I'm excited about the journey. I'm excited about you guys helping us get better. The reason in our strategy where we have an x-axis and a y-axis is because when we think we're good, and we're not, you know, I guess I'm always focusing on areas of weakness and how we get better. But when we think we're good, then we redefine what good is. We've all experienced exceptional service. We've all experienced service where it seems like people were purposely wanting to tell you no. With all the travel, I do, and everybody's kind of traveled, and it seems like sometimes when you're dealing with especially when you go to the desk at the airline, it's almost like they take glee and close the door just before you get there. It's like, hey, sorry, you missed it. So I mean, I missed it. 16 minutes. I got 16 minutes to get on the plane. No, we shut off in 15 minutes. Yeah, I know, but it's 16 minutes. Nope, it's 15 minutes. It's 14 after the hour or whatever. It's like, trust me, I was here. Sorry, sir. You have to fly tomorrow. And they almost revel. It's almost like this little smile on their face like, man, I love telling this guy no. It's really bizarre. That's terrible service. A fundamental component of who we are and how we achieve everything is this idea of never saying no. What does that mean, never say no? Because you think about never saying no. You say, well, that's ridiculous. There's just, you can't do, it's just things you can't do. If I ask someone in this audience to do something and you don't have the knowledge to do it, you're just not capable. If I ask you to lift 500 pounds, you'd say, no, I can't lift 500 pounds. And so you'd almost revel in, hey, I'm glad he asked 500 because if it was 100, I'd just be struggling with that. I didn't really want to lift even 100, but 500 I just can't do. It's so ridiculous. Nope, can't do it. But a lot of people would say, all right, you want me to lift 500 pounds? Let me find the contraption. I'll build the contraption, and I'll get the 5 people to do it, or I'll go get the Hoyer lift right outside this door that's rated at 1,000 pounds, and I'll lift it right up. I'm not thinking in the context of just me. Oh, I can't lift 500 pounds. No, I can't do it. Never saying no means you got to think. It means you got to be an innovative leader. It means you got to value all the things that we talk about valuing. It means that ultimately you want to drive performance excellence, that you want to impact those stakeholders in a positive way. And we've got hundreds of techs out in the field every day that are challenged with having to find answers. They're out there by themselves, and they're often asked, hey, you got to lift this 500-pound patient for me. They say, hey, no, we don't do that. And the reality is there are rules that we have to follow. But somehow we got to help them find that answer. And so what we thrive on, besides chaos, what we thrive on is never saying no. Give us the challenge. Because our competitors don't deal with challenges very well, we do. So tell us, what do you need? And then our job is to figure out how to find a way to get it done. And sometimes that starts with just let me understand the problem better. You want to lift 500 pounds? Why? What are we doing with the 500 pounds? Where do we want to take it? So I can begin to think about all the ways of helping you get that 500-pound thing wherever you need it or why it needs to be lifted. And when you align yourself with the problem, and you're on the same side of the table as the person that has the need, they see it, they feel it. Trust me, they do. You feel it. You've gone through, like I said, good service and bad service. You know when people said, you know, I don't know if I can do that, but let me try and figure out how to do it with you. You just want to like hug that person. You're like, hey, man, whatever you can do is going to be good for me. Versus that one that just kind of smiles and says, man, I just shut that door at 60 minutes. I know it's maybe 16 minutes, but sometimes we get an early start. Sorry. Right? That's not great service, and that's certainly not us. Never saying no is fundamental to everything we talk about. And when you put on a purple shirt, that means I never say no. It means I'm an innovative leader. It means that I expect to participate in this company at every level. It means all of those things. And ultimately, what it fundamentally means is when I'm done, either at the end of my career or at the end of the day, there are a lot of people that are better because of what I did here. So anyway, that's inside the purple shirt. That's the introduction, and I appreciate your time and attention.